he wrote a letter and stated that what the chief was doing was not proper, and so he was a witness. As far as the officer that didn't get disciplined, he also wrote a complaint almost a year ago, and he's been harassed and he's turned in an EEOC charge from time to time, and I think it was investigated. I didn't feel, with all the going-ons over there, until I got to the bottom of who's right, who's wrong, we weren't going to terminate anybody. I did say you could send the gentleman home or discipline him other than termination. As far as the officer showing up, yes, I did say that we needed 5 men on the street. For us to have 35 officers and down to 2 and sometimes 3 only working nights is just not acceptable in Fairhope. And I said I wanted a minimum of 5 on the street at all times. And now, after the part of the discussion the other night, it did come up, and I was going to change that to a minimum of 4, because they said that they're having to work steady with no time off, period. And I'm just telling you, there's a lot of information, and I am trying to be open-minded to what's being said and not done, and I plan to show every bit of it to you, and you can read it for yourselves and see it. We'll bring back to both groups of what was said, but I'm not an expert on the police within itself, so that's the reason I figured that Paul could help, or maybe there's an agency or somebody that knows how to talk to some of these officers and get down to the root of the problem. If it's me, fine. If it's the chief, fine. If it's the council, I don't know, but we need to get it fixed, and I'll agree. And as far as the letter that you mentioned about me knowing or not knowing, if you also looked in those records, you'll see where Chief Sanders wrote a letter and also Chief Press wrote a letter. So
they didn't write a letter. This was a piece of evidence. This was not.
I understand that, but that was also the same group that said I was being investigated by the FBI, which wasn't factual. And, you know, at the end of the day, I didn't realize $185,000 was going in and out of an account over there. We would have had some other stopgaps on this thing years ago. It was set up for a Christmas party that we had once a year that all the council members went to and every other elected official went to all over the county and Mobile County. And apparently it's got out of hand, and I think we need to get a hold of that. If that's the kind of money that's running in and out of the police station, we need to get a better handle on it. So I'm not saying anything. After the commissions looked at it, they said there wasn't any wrongdoing, and I accept that. But I also know that I looked at the same information, staff looked at the same information, council looked at the same information, the director of the ethics commission looked at the information, the investigator looked at it, and they called every one of us to Montgomery. Now, if they looked at it and there wasn't anything wrong, I wish they would have told us from day one and wrote me a letter when I did a year ago and said, Mayor, everything's fine.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to argue with you, but you know as well as I do that was a grand jury investigation. Basically, that's the way they run it. And you know as well as I do that they can call, and this is the first grand jury that I know that couldn't indict a ham sandwich.
That's what I'm saying.
You know,
I've never been
and they
there.
looked. Did they look at all that stuff? Yes, they did. And they said it wasn't anything there. My problem is nobody knew anything about this until you did it. Until you did this unilaterally. There wasn't anybody that knew anything about it. That's the problem that I have. Are we going to go around accusing each other of doing things, or are we going to try and work problems out for the good of Fairhope? Because I can tell you there wasn't anything good that's going to come out of this.
All I know is I was in a catch-22 position, and when I was brought to my desk from staff, I asked for some legal advice, and I was told just write a letter and don't say anything, and I never brought it up at all till all of a sudden there was a letter or something else brought up by another individual. And till that point for over a year, and for something like that to be held in Fairhope for over a year, I mean, I was counting on them to write a letter of response like they have done in other cases like this, saying what you could or couldn't do. And I never did get that. But going forward, I'm going to meet with the 2 council members and Paul Myrick and figure out what we have to do to get to the bottom, what is or what isn't the issues at the police station.
Okay. Ms. Quinn, back to comments of the council. Do you have any comments?